Welcome to Barry's in the Interim podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of innovative clinical trial design for the pharmaceutical and medical industries, and so much more. Let's dive in.
All right, welcome everybody back to In the Interim. This is actually our 60th episode of In the Interim. I'm your host, Scott Barry, and I'm joined by two other senior statistical scientists at Barry, Dr. Nicholas Barry and Dr. Joe Marion. Welcome back to In the Interim.
Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. Happy to be here.
So the 60th episode of In the Interim, 60 interims. Interestingly, Joe was just recently involved in the 60th interim analysis of a clinical trial, and we won't say what trial that was, but you're doing double duty on the 60.
Yeah, it's funny how that number creeps up on you, right? People always ask me, like, how many interims can you have in a clinical trial? Or like, surely you can't do too many of these, and sky's the limit as far as I can tell. If I stayed at Barry for another 30 years, we'd be at, how many interims would that be? It'd be a lot.
Be a lot.
Yeah. We joke about how you spend your alpha at Barry sometimes. When you do an interim, you're spending your personal alpha. So 60 interims is a lot of alpha for you to spend.
I'm all out alpha, man. Well, I mean, if you believe that the alpha spending literature, every time you get a failure, you get to recover some alpha, right? So maybe
you're buying back alpha? All right.
Yeah.
All right. There's nothing better than adaptive design humor for our episodes. Yeah.
People love it, and they invite us to parties because they want to hear it. So, yeah.
Okay. So today's episode, when we come up, we've done 60 episodes of this, and we're not running out of ideas, just like we're not running out of alpha. We have lots of ideas. And I'm asked all the time when I go out, how is AI affecting Barry consultants? I'm asked by statisticians, I'm asked by clinicians, I'm asked by people who don't know really what we do, but we know we have a company in the tech space. So today's episode is AI at Barry. How do we use it? What do we know about it? What do we think where the world is going? And today I have Nick and Joe on, and they're part of our committee that is exploring AI. And it's an incredibly rapidly moving thing, and we're keeping track of this. So we're going to talk about today AI at Barry. I think it's important to set up what Barry does. So statisticians within the clinical trial space do lots of different things. Some of those things we don't do, some things we do. And I think it's important in the role of AI in those things. So Barry Consultants at its heart is a clinical trial science company. We have clinical trial scientists that work at Barry. Most of them are statistically trained. We do have clinicians, we have mathematicians, computer scientists, but they are clinical trial scientists. We do really three major things, core competencies. And the first is trial design and trial strategy. So the science of clinical trial development and how the trial fits into that, the science of it. We, most of the time, were involved in designs that would be considered innovative. And from that meaning, not typical, not fixed trials. So we do adaptive trials, seamless trials, adaptive enrichment trials. We incorporate external data within a clinical trial, more complicated analyses in a trial, platform trials, basket trials. All of these fall under this umbrella of innovative clinical trial design. So we spend a lot of times in the design of these trials. The implementation of these innovative trials, whether it's carrying out the analyses, doing 60 interim analyses in the trial, needs additional expertise. And so we have a group that are experts in implementing innovative trial designs. So that's another core competency here at Berry in doing that. Clinical trial simulation plays a critical role in the design of innovative trials. Simulation guided clinical trial design. We do it on individual projects. We might be writing custom code for individual projects. We also have software that we license to pharmaceutical, academics, government, CROs for clinical trial simulation. And so we have a product that does that. It's another core competency at Berry in what we work on and what we do on a daily basis. So thinking about what is the role of AI in these various activities. What we don't do is we don't do a process stuff in trials. We stay out of the quote unquote CRO space. We don't create databases for trials. We don't do data management in trials. Generation of the tables, listings, and figures, the SaaS programs that generate these, creation of CRFs. We don't do that. CROs are really good at that, and that's not part of this strategy part of clinical trial science. SAPs play an interesting role, and maybe an interesting role in the whole role of AI in all of this. We do contribute to statistical analysis plans. We don't create the huge tomb of all of the tables, listings, and figures, concomitant meds, and all of that, because the group doing the TLFs should be involved in that. But we play a really contributing critical role to the analysis, the objective within SAPs. So we work on SAPs, but we don't sort of generate them as a core competency. The last thing is we are not experts in AI. Now, interesting conversation. Should we be calling ourselves experts in AI in that? But we don't consider ourselves. So in this question of AI, we're not selling clients that we're AI. But we're utilizing AI and how we're using it. We're learning about that. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So maybe I'll throw it to Nick. Now, Nick, you do design, you do implementation, you spend the majority of your time on the software team. How do you use AI?
Yeah, I mean, this is maybe the most straightforward use case where I think it's pretty generally accepted that AI is very good at coding, especially if you limit it to things that are, all over the internet. Like for me, it's incredibly good at creating user interfaces. It's better than I am at modifying visual interfaces, connecting buttons to effects, and making sure all the data is propagating to the right places, and tracking data storage models and things like that. It's incredibly good at that. And we definitely use it for that. We have this Fax that is now 17 years old. It's the name of our software, Fax. It was created obviously before AI. The desktop app, the Fax desktop app has, essentially no LLM generated code in it, right? It's written predating it. We are working on new technologies, developing new fancy versions of Fax and other applications, and it comes in handy in that. With that said, like with the user interfaces thing that I love using it for, I am by now familiar with some of the pitfalls of using it. Probably makes me better at using it in general, but it's not incredibly good at writing technical statistical code in my experience. Some things it does really well. I think if you're simulating a trial and you want it to generate an accrual of patients for you, like it knows it's going to do the cumulative sum of exponentially distributed patients, and it does that every time. That's not what I'm talking about. Predictive probabilities is a case where I've seen it. It thinks it knows what it's doing, and even says something really, reassuring about what it's doing, and then lo and behold, it's not doing what you think it's doing. And so some of the more, maybe nuanced statistical concepts, I think it struggles at. But in general, I think it's really good even, in simulations, writing simulation code. It will give you a backbone. It'll give you a nice flow through your app and help you write stuff. And so I think we use it for a lot of like non-technical coding. I tried to get help with we're adding analytical calculations for a lot of designs to facts. And, this is a numerical integration. It's really computer science heavy code, not so much like statistical heavy code in a lot of ways. And in that case, it knows right away, like, oh, you're using this person's integration algorithm. These are your weights, so on, so on. And then it randomly slips in something you don't want to be there. And it's hard to catch that in a lot of cases because, those algorithms are not like intuitive to look at and say, oh yeah, okay, I see exactly where it went wrong. And so we had some mixed results in like that heavy computation area.
Is the cost of debugging worth the cost of using it? Like what's the trade-off in time, and then like I don't know, what's the trade-off in enjoyment? Like what would you rather be doing?
Yeah, for me it was worth it. That's not like a dopamine hit for me, right? Like writing numerical integration code that doesn't keep the lights on like mentally for me.
You're not coming over to my house, that's for sure. Stay away on Friday nights. Yeah.
Interestingly, the UI stuff, watching it make big changes and like, I feel like I have a really nice flow for this. Like I'm going to help people understand what they're inputting in our app, and it's going to be so nice. That is a dopamine hit, and the amount that it can do sort of in one shot is kind of incredible, and it's low stakes, right? A lot of times you can look at it and say, yeah, it did the right thing. And I can look at the database and say, yeah, all the stuff's where it needs to be. There's other things that are higher stakes, like are my group sequential probabilities being calculated correctly? And is the type 1 error that I'm reporting actually a type 1 error and things like that. So
let's talk a little bit about efficiency. And you demonstrated to me an example the other day. And I think, by the way, I can ask, what's your favorite AI for code generation?
I used Claude. I use Claude Opus as of today. 4.7 is the model I tend to use.
Thinking, right? Or
extra high thinking. Usually not max thinking. It depends. I got places to be. You can't use max. Yeah.
Okay, so you provided a demonstration of a pretty simple clinical trial design, but simulations. It made in our Shiny app, really beautiful app for exploring things and all of that. And I know you kind of knew what you wanted to do going into this, but largely you could write this code in 10 minutes. It was the demonstration
with Claude.
of this. With Claude.
Well, yeah, the Claude writes the code in 10 minutes.
I meant using AI, where if you sat down from scratch and writing this, it's 10 days. Don't know the magnitude of that. Yeah. And now I just challenged Nick about how long he could do it for that. But
I might never need to write reactivity code in Shiny ever again. I mean, I'm not a Shiny developer, right? I'm not even really a web developer, even though I do it to some extent. But I mean, I'm a statistical developer in most regards. So Claude is good at doing the things that I don't really know that well, right? These are the fringe cases of my job that I've had to learn. I've had to go and, take courses online about how to do web development. And now I'm passing off a lot of that skill set, which is great as long as it's doing a good job, which it seems to be doing. But the skill set that I'm sort of an expert in, which is the more statistical computation, writing MCMC code, things like that, I'm doing that still, right? That's not something I'm passing off to AI at this point.
So we're putting together a development plan. So you mentioned Fax as a desktop product, for example. We're making it a cloud-based product. We're redesigning the GUI to this. We're adding a number of really nice things. Had we done this 5 years ago, we would have had more developers and it would have taken significantly longer. All of a sudden, with what AI has done in the last year, we need less GUI developers within all of this. Nick is productivity maybe of 3 developers years ago in terms of time. This is game-changing, enormous ability for us to do this much more efficiently.
Well, in my mind, it's like the perfect use case. I'm not going to say like, oh, we 10x'd our development. That's not sometimes, but we took a mature app that we've spent 15 years with statistical programmers developing. We've always had the engines in the background, like the crown jewel, right? This is the multiple imputation, MCMC, dose response modeling, all the good stuff that drives facts and makes it do stuff that no other software can do. That is there. It's essentially unchanged. The only thing we have to do for this web development is create a facade around it that takes in inputs, converts them to parameters, and passes it into our engines. So I think it's like the perfect use case, right? The tests that we use for current facts carry over. They go to web facts. Like, our testing, we can run these on the cloud. We can run them on the desktop and make sure the results match. Like, we have so many protections while we develop this that it's like the perfect use case for AI for this AI as a coding agent, at least in my mind. And so we've gotten really nice returns from it as like a UI scaffolder.
Yeah.
Scott, let me ask you a question, Scott. So now Nick is doing the work of 3 Nicks. I mean, we're making up the number 3, but let's just say it's 3 Nicks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, that says maybe you want more Nicks, right? Like, he's in some sense, you're getting 3 times the value for the same person. Like, maybe you want even more, like maybe it's not that we're more efficient, but like, I mean, maybe you'd want 9 Nicks worth of capacity now, right? And I think like at the margin, it's kind of changing the value of what we can do. So
yeah, from a business perspective, this is really interesting. Is do I have the work to support 9 times 9 Nicks, sort of thing within that in the development? And so we, as a company, we've talked about we've got a good amount of business. Barry's doing very well. We could expand people. We could add more people to Barry. It's an interesting question of, in 5 years, will all of the individuals at Barry be 3 times themselves, 5 times themselves? And all of a sudden, the work needed, do I need more people? It's a really interesting thing from a business perspective. And software is different than design.
Yeah, software is, I'm thinking more on the software side of the house is where this is like, you could do things that would have been really expensive before, and now maybe they make sense, right? Like now they're
the skill set that makes me good for the software team right now is not my ability to develop software. It's a little bit of that, but mostly it's me being able to see what I want and have ideas about what I want. From we've learned a lot of lessons with Facts Desktop over the years. We're trying to improve this cloud app to resolve all the things we wish we'd resolved, but being able to know what I think people would expect, what I want this new app to do, and then precisely state, and this is where my software skills come in, is tell the AI agent exactly what I want it to do. And a lot of times that involves speaking in sort of software terms and using things that aid me in being precise about specifying what we want. And especially for like the front end and for things like that, it's mostly just having a vision and being extremely specific about how you want to implement it.
And having good taste, having a good vision, right?
A good vision is a lot of it.
Both of those things matter, right?
Yeah.
It's an incredible time to build things.
Yes.
So this is going to come back as in, you brought up the really important issue that you have this imagination and ability to know where to go. You're consuming lots of information and making these really good decisions. And then you can tell AI to do something and you know what it is. And AI is really, really good at taking those instructions and creating something. And you're iterating it and you're on top of it and you're controlling it.
It's been fun because I can ask it to do 3 things and I can pick which one I like the best. Whereas normally I don't have time to do all 3 things and look at them, but I can ask it to do 3 things. I can look at them. I can say, oh, this one actually turned out the best. Let's do that one. And like, that's, so we do that a fair amount, is actually get to look at the options live in the app and going. So
So
I
Joe,
think that's like a good tip for general use too, right? Is like
sure.
ask for multiple things, give it feedback on what you like, the labor is in some sense cheap on its end. So, yeah, spend it and interact with it.
Okay, so that maybe we should make sure we touch on how to use it well, but that sounds like that's an important role of it. So how do you Joe spends more of his time in the design of clinical trials. He does implementation, 60 interims in a particular trial, does implementation. How do you use AI at Barry?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's overlap with what Nick does, of course, right? Like, I think coding is where these things are their very best. So, we're writing simulation code. We do a lot of visualization. It's good at visualization, but of course you got to be very specific, right? You have to know what to tell it that you want. It'll produce plots, but they're often like, not quite of the right quality. And so, things you can do is like, you can have like a style guide for how you want plots to look and that kind of thing. And that helps it sort of one-shot those tasks a little bit better. Things I'm really excited about. One application of it that I think is really cool is there's this common like step of regulatory interactions with where when you're preparing for a briefing with FDA. I feel like every company ever that's doing this preparation, one of the things they do is they think about what could the FDA's response be to our questions? What should we be prepared to answer? How do we do that strategizing? And I sort of always, I don't know. I mean, I felt it was necessary, right? But I hated writing those questions down. I kind of knew what they were. It's tremendously interesting to get the AI critique of like a sanitized document. What is the regulatory perspective going to be? And I think it's really valuable to us at Barry because, based on the things it's trained on, it's going to give you a pretty traditional view. And I think that can really help you sort of understand what that is. It's not the argument we're usually articulating because of, the kind of work that we do. But I love that ability to get critique from it. I think it's tremendously fascinating.
In my experience in doing something like that, it's usually like a numbers game in getting a lot of different things from the AI model where you can pick and choose the things that are actually intellectually interesting. And like you said, I kind of want to emphasize, we work at Barry Consultants. We tend to have, we're obviously not a homogenous population of people, but in general, we're designing adaptive trials, often Bayesian, interim analyses, things like that. And the literature, everything that's posted online, the vast majority of it is traditional and frequentist and not as innovative as a lot of things we do. So the LLM thinks like that, right? So you're almost getting you are getting a conservative perspective when you ask it questions.
Yeah, a complementary view, and then you can think through how you'd answer them. It's not very good at answering its own questions because, we've got a particular house view that's like really underrepresented, but, I think that it's like a pretty exciting thing. And yeah, like Nick said, you want a bunch. Like if you get 10 criticisms, you might like 3 or 4 of them might really be worth interesting and worth addressing, but it's still good value.
Have you ever told it, give me feedback like you work at Barry Consultants?
Yeah, actually, I think I haven't tried this in a while, but I used to tell it to like, write like Kurt Veely, right? Or like, give me the Kurt Veely arguments for this kind of thing. And like, it was not a very good Kurt. I wonder if it's a good Kurt now. I mean, that would be interesting to me. I kind of think it probably isn't. It can do other public figures reasonably well, but I don't think it does any like statisticians super well.
Yeah, Kurt's interesting because he posts on Twitter a lot, right? He has threads on Twitter about different things, and he probably not, he has a lot of public visibility on some of these topics because he
has some chance
LinkedIn
of
and stuff like
there,
that,
right? Yeah. Other stuff that I think AI is cool for. I produce way more Shiny apps than before because the cost of doing so is really low. And what's great is that you can pass them to clients and then that really gives them like a hands-on tool that allows them to interact with the decision they're making, to tweak all the levers themselves, to get that kind of first-hand experience. sometimes in like a rare disease trial, they'll want to know what is, I have 50 endpoints, which one should I use, right? And the ability to hand a tool over instead of like a ton of plots is tremendously useful. Absolutely improves the communication. I'm hopeful like that this will be good for facts too, right? You can imagine a plain language version of facts where you describe in text what you want the design to be, and then it knows how to set up a facts file. Like, that's probably a little bit of a ways away, but it's not like a pie in the sky dream anymore. I think 5 years ago, that would have been a tremendously complex endeavor.
Of course, every single person that we show this cloud app to, their mind initially goes like, it makes so much sense. This has to be something that we can do. It's so cool. And the parameters that go into facts are known, right? It's not like it has to write simulation code that can do infinitely many things. There's a set of parameters that are predefined. The storage mechanism for those parameters is predefined. We have documentation for that. Presumably, you give that to an LLM. Someone can describe their trial that they want, not design me a good trial. Because we can get to this later, but it's not going to do a good job. It's not going to do what you want. It's not going to do a good job in that case. But I want a trial with 3 interims. I want Goldilocks stopping style decisions at interims with these predictive probabilities. And I want to figure out what p-value threshold gives me good type 1 error. Like now it's got the parameters it needs, and it can fill in, can say, oh, when do you want your interim scheduled and things like that. And then all it has to do is say, go to interim analysis schedule vector 300, 400, 500. And we have to teach it its guardrails. And then I think it's like, a matter of figuring out exactly, what prompt gets it to do the right thing and things like that. But it's not pie in the sky.
What's the right iteration loop that lets it learn that, right?
Yeah.
So as of this point, so AI is being used, the LLMs, where you're asking it to write code or you're asking it to do a task, and it's making us much more efficient, even better at that task. You said typically you'd walk in historically with a set of 7 slides that you're presenting to a client. Now you're walking in with an app that has presumably hundreds of potential things that they could look at. So you're increasing things, but largely you're using it to be more efficient and maybe a bit more broad about what you're doing. What you just described is a whole different thing where we're training something at generative AI, that we're now creating a tool that's using AI for somebody to use facts or somebody to use it, which we haven't done yet, but is an intoxicating thought.
Yeah. Really democratizing in some sense, right? You still have to have good taste to use that tool, right? Yeah. You still would have to know what to tell it, right? It's not a self-governing process, but I think it cuts so much of the learning curve, so much of the uninteresting learning curve out, maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into some of that. But let's talk about things that are happening at Berry with AI. I think you can't do a search engine now without it being AI. The default in all of this, and that's pretty common. I think everybody's doing that. The writing, you talked about writing. The ability for it to read your writing, to critique it, to update it. Every one of these podcasts goes into AI and it creates social media blurbs and a blog.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and a blog. Now, I read every single one of the social media things. I edit it. I read the blogs. I will go in and read some of these, and there will be a paragraph that I just don't understand. And it just didn't sort of work and all of that. And I don't mean that to be critical of AI. I think that's
just where the technology is sometimes, right? Like,
yep. And maybe it was because I didn't do a very good job on the podcast of explaining it, and that's when AI came out with the meaning of it. We did one on the Award 5 trial. That was the acronym of the trial, and it kept saying the award-winning Trulicity trial, that sort of thing, which was great. But those things, if I were to produce them myself, is maybe 4 hours to write the blog and the social media stuff. I get those and I edit them in an hour. This is productivity, And it does some neat stuff to it that I think makes it better than if I had to self-generate it entirely by myself. It's a different sort of view on it. We're exploring things like we write hundreds of proposals a year. We have a bank of proposals. And I write many of these, and these take, a couple hours to write each one of these. All of a sudden, AI does a really nice job at that. So these are natural things that this does within it and the code. Other things currently at Berry that we can say we currently do with AI.
I think we need to talk about writing. But you kind of, this could be considered one of you said our three pillars are like design, implementation, and software. I think you could essentially add, publication and research to that as something that we do a lot of at Berry.
I'll push back on that a little bit though, and what AI does on that, because a simple.
I'm going to describe what I think too. But
okay,
yeah, I think we are going to disagree, so this should be fun.
Oh, that makes for a good podcast and an interesting blog when it comes out.
Yeah, I might disagree with both of you, but I think AI sucks at writing things from scratch. I think it's obvious when it writes something. I maybe this is hubris, but I feel like I can tell. And obviously, the other side of this is that think of all the times I've read something and haven't said, "Oh, that's AI," and when it actually has been. So obviously, I don't know my error rate, but
there's some science behind that. If you're a heavier user, you tend to know to be a better identifier, right?
Okay, yeah.
I mean, that's a studied fact, but yeah.
Yep. I think it's vacuous and non-precise when it writes, especially when it's writing from scratch. So even God, I go on LinkedIn where this podcast will be advertised on LinkedIn, and I'll see it. Every single post on LinkedIn looks the same. They're all the same. It's like header, 5 bullet points with emojis, footer, and it's like people just over and over and over write this. So I think it's bad at writing things from scratch. It uses similar patterns over and over. And when I notice that pattern, I immediately start discounting the ideas in the thing that I'm reading, right? So maybe I'm being a little too negative, but this is like kind of how I go. I will not take as much heed in what is written if I think I detect AI being the main author of the thing that I'm reading. I think it's bad at it.
I bet a lot of people feel that way. I think that's I think that's a correct view.
Yeah.
Wouldn't disagree that that's how people perceive that kind of writing, right? I mean, I think so. One, there are lots of kinds of writing that aren't necessarily about getting lots of good character or an interesting structure to it, right? There's a lot of writing that's about just like sort of clearly presenting what you're describing, laying out the facts, that kind of thing. I think the idea of voice is less important in that kind of writing. But I don't think it's like a standalone thing that you should write something by itself, right? I think a really good use case of it is like, you always used to get that writing advice, like just write down your ideas as fast as you can and get a first sloppy draft out there and just like make that happen. And I think this is a much more pain-free way to get that first draft of a paragraph or something like that. It's like definitely not the final one, but getting words on the page is a huge unblocker in a lot of situations. And then I like that once that's been done, I can be very critical, right? It puts me in the mode of a reviewer when I'm reading that text. I mean, you need to be, right? Because you need to be critical of it. But when you're seeing it, then you can think, oh, okay, I don't have any buy-in in this text. There's no sentences I love in here. Like, let's really dissect this and pick it apart and make it into something that's worth doing. I will say, I feel like a lot of it's like, it often like misses, it gets like the subtleties way wrong when it writes. And so that it's a kind of like sloppiness or imprecision in the way that it's communicating. And so that I pay a lot of attention to. If you just kind of breed through it, it's like, oh yeah, those words sound kind of nice together. It like kind of, it gives you a warm fuzzy, but then when you think real deep about it, like, oh, maybe I don't like that at all. So But I love the ability to do that first drafting, and then I love the ability later on to do tweaking, little things like, hey, I know this sentence is wrong. Here's what I don't like about it. Give me 5 different options. And then you get a sentence, and then you tweak that again. And then I like that iterative, version of writing. I'm sure it comes real natural to someone who's written a very, very large amount.
Yeah, I do like the editing and the fine tuning, and especially the ability to ask it to edit your text and then review things as it tries to make changes, where it's not just now sending you back a huge paragraph with stuff changed. Like, it highlights where it made a change and what's new and things like that. And you can then walk through and see what it's actually changing without having to wonder.
And it'll tell you why sometimes too, which is nice, right?
Yep. Yeah. I think it definitely, it's a good editor in a lot of cases.
So I don't think we have the huge disagreement that we thought we would have.
Okay.
I agree.
Damn
entirely.
it.
Yeah.
Well, what are people listening for?
Yeah. That's right. Right. That's right. Now, but the interesting thing in all of this is not to become, critical of AI. And somebody wrote me a thing where they largely they took 25 references and said, write me a paper based on these 25 references. And I hated it. There's nothing new. It wasn't written very well. It was poor. But this is going to get better and better and better. The idea that AI will never do this. I mean, imagine how good it's gotten in the last few years. So this is the current status of it. But I agree, I don't like it, but it's an amazing editor tool. It's an amazing thing that if you're actively working with it and you're writing it, getting suggestions, this is an incredible tool.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, which I mean a couple of years ago, like the very onset of ChatGPT, when it became public, someone sent an email to Don Barry, our founder, been on the podcast a bunch of times, saying, if you give me $5,000, I'll write a biography about you. And Don asked for a snippet, said, okay, send me a snippet or blah, 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 blah. And it wrote Don's biography, and they sent it to him in a lot of things. And he read it apparently and said, it got a lot of things right. So he replied and said, if you can make it do this, 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 and this, I'll pay you. And I think they became impossible for AI to do, especially at that time. But so he never paid $5,000, but people, so.
Yeah, it's interesting, for example, could I dump my 60 episodes of In the Interim into AI and say, write me a book?
It's called a manifesto at that point, but
or what would Scott say?
We need a lot more manifestos out there for sure.
What would Scott say to the following? Does it know who I am? Now, obviously, it's going to do really well at knowing, what would Trump say? What would Obama say? What would others say? Because there's such a wealth of stuff out there. But that's interesting. But let's move to something that concerns me as a company. So when we're working with a client, we really need to worry about confidentiality. So what does that have to do with AI? If we use AI, we need to make sure that the confidential information that it's using to write something doesn't then go outside and become part of its wide world that it's using to write other stuff, where all of a sudden it's using that for somebody else. So security is a huge deal. What do we know about security?
Do you want this, Joe?
Come on.
So Joe and I are on the AI committee.
Yeah. You've looked into this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we know some things, right? So there are things that they say that, for example, our data is encrypted in transit and at rest. That means that there's not really a point in the process when it's human readable. So you have to be able to decrypt it to read the data. They talk about, they say, the business versions of the paid versions of these softwares say that they won't train on your data. We learned yesterday that has at least some known caveats around it. In particular, if you give them feedback, did you like or not like a response? Well, then that actually gives them permission to look at that. So, that's kind of concerning. So it's a little bit harder to parse the implications of that statement, right? Like it doesn't, we won't train on your data. I mean, what does that mean exactly, and how would a lawyer understand that? It's harder. I don't know. I think in some sense, I do think about this in some ways at least, and there are absolutely exceptions to. There are absolutely reasons why this is not a good analogy, which we can go into. But I think in some ways, it's a little bit analogous to email, right? In that you have your confidential information. It's stored in someone else's. It's stored in someone else's servers. It's not local. It is potentially. It's encrypted, but you're kind of relying on their guarantees that they're treating that data in a way that's fair and reasonable. I don't know, Nick. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I use that as a mental model in the same way. And there are things that we don't email, right? At Barry, certainly, patient level data doesn't go through email. Interim analysis reports for trials that are still that are still blinded to the public don't go through email. And we have different like SFTP protocols that we use for those. So we are not AI policy lawyers. There are AI policy lawyers looking into these things, but that's not us. I think because of that, we have taken a sort of conservative approach at a lot of things. And even though we have this like business plan that says we're not going to train on your data, like that doesn't give us free reign to upload everything and to put everything in there. So we're tasked with, and we don't have an SOP yet. We don't have this like completely put together, but Joe and I and the committee that we're on are tasked with trying to come up with strategies for this. And, there are obvious red line, don't do this, and there are gray areas, and we don't have all the answers to this, but conservatism kind of.
Yeah, well, and I think people generally don't have the answers, right? But I agree with you. We're trying to take a conservative kind of measured approach.
Yeah. So no patient data, blind documents that you upload. You can give the structure of a data frame without needing to give the data set to AI and things like that. And it's hard because we're not all, like Barry is not a homogenous group of AI users. Every person feels differently, thinks differently, uses it differently. And at the end of the day, we don't get to watch people interact with AI. And so we kind of have to have some trust in the people at Barry. And we tried to do this at our meeting, which is we have to instill some sort of working knowledge about AI in the entire company because everyone's going to be using it. And we want everyone that's using it to be at least informed in some regards about how they should and shouldn't interact with it. And so it's hard, but we laid down some like obvious do not do's. And I feel like that helps a lot to clean up some of the stuff, but there's still gray areas.
Okay. Now, another one that bothers me and is AI that's generating a statistical model. And interestingly, if you ask AI to create you a piece of code, you have the code, and that's the product, and you can do that. Unlearn, for example, talks about generating digital twins, and they don't tell you what it does. It's AI. It's a black box. And by the way, it's also a hype thing. It can't be wrong because it's AI sort of thing. So I bristle at this a little bit because behind this, if AI helped you create a model, there's a model. And we can talk about the model and the data that goes into it. So I really worry this becomes both a hype thing, a black box thing, and takes away from the value of us as statisticians, as model builders. So I don't think at Barry we've ever used AI to create a model.
To fit a model, to get results from a model? Like,
yeah, I'm not even sure what that means now.
Here's the data, give me the density of the treatment effect parameter.
Or predict what this patient is going to be like in 6 months. Don't tell me how you did it, but predict it kind of thing.
Because I've definitely done, here's the model I want, write it in Stan. I mean, that's that's not what you're talking about, right?
No.
They would even write your Stan model, fit your Stan model, make you a density plot, and do all that for you now.
So I really worry
Now I
about
kind of
that.
want to.
Yeah.
Separate experiment. Yeah.
Though if I wanted to sell Barry, I think if I changed its name to Barry AI, much like what is this shoe company, Allbirds or something? Who
You
did
mean
this?
Birds? Yep.
Yeah.
Birds.ai.
Yeah.
Freebirds.ai.
You know, that somehow
I
this
know what
hype,
you're talking
all of a
about.
sudden Barry's worth 5 times what it is, you know, sort of as a thing. So I bristle at that. We talked a little bit about generative AI, and we haven't jumped into that. I think let's sort of finish this a little bit with the question of, will AI take our jobs? Within the Senate, it's a fair question. I think certain people in the statistical community, it's a worry, and it's interesting. The people whose jobs are threatened is more than the people who think their jobs are threatened. Oh, AI can't do what I do. You know, eventually AI is going to do what we all do, but you know, how long is it? Do you feel like AI threatens our jobs? Joe?
I mean, I hope it threatens part of my job. I hope that pretty soon we're using AI just like fully for validation of code, right? I think we would do a lot more validating, which I think would be valuable for us. And I would personally be doing less code validation. And if it took that part of my job, I wouldn't shed any tears.
Yeah.
Right? Is it going to take my job overall? I don't know. I think it's quite hard to say where things are going. The robots are building themselves right now, right? And it's hard to know like what the end state of that is. Yeah. Nick, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I do more software development than both of you, so that puts my job immediately at more risk, I think. The Anthropic just you're talking about the hype of AI. Anthropic just released that their new model Mythos can't be released to the public because it's too dangerous, because it found 0-day security issues in every major operating system. It's probably hype, like, right? If you want to advertise your new model called Mythos, you say it's too dangerous to be released, and people get really excited for it.
Absolutely.
So it's working like a charm.
Too dangerous.
Yeah. We got to think of a better name with Greek origins than FaxCloud. We did talk about I can't remember some cloud name, Cirrus or something like that as our FaxCloud or something that probably works. But
what's the word for storm cloud in Greek? That's what we want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my job might, at least my pure programming part of my job is probably more at risk. But like I talked about earlier, the part of my job that I'm retaining completely is the decision-making part and the planning part and the vision part. And it's hard for me to see with the, current generation of models that being at risk. What might happen eventually is that my decision-making turns into more of a clicking, yeah, that's good, and it's iteratively making a bunch of stuff, or it makes 10 decisions and I choose the good ones and it builds itself or something like that. So I mean, obviously we're stupidly conjecturing about something that we can't possibly know and aren't that informed about. But I don't know, I feel like the decision making that we have is safe, and the planning and telling the story in the right way, which is something we do so well and so purposefully, is safe. But a lot of the technical things, eventually it's going to be able to do the technical things that I said it's not good at doing right now.
Yeah. The parts of this job that are about communication and especially relationship building, I don't think those will go away. Like, they're never going to send Claude to go talk to the FDA. They're going to send Scott Berry, right? Like, that's, the AI is just not going to have the same weight, right? The same credibility. Like,
the whole strategy part, that even people are using it to design trials. You could go into one of these and say, design me a trial, but it's going to do what you tell it to do. 3 arms, this and all that, not asking the questions. Is this the right thing in your development? What are your uncertainties? Asking the right questions to understand, why are you doing the trial? This whole part, before you get into give me the calculations of the following, are the huge part to this. And AI can't do that yet. Maybe eventually it's doing those parts, but it's not there yet. Okay. The I hearken that to I went in for dizziness a couple days ago, and I saw a real clinician, and she asked me a couple questions, and she knew immediately what it was, positional vertigo. And not only that, she said, do this Epley's maneuver. And it was a physical thing of moving your head into position for 3 minutes, and it was gone. It was a cure. So, maybe AI is going to get there, and it could ask me the right questions.
Yeah. Did you ask Claude what was wrong with you?
That's crazy.
I did, and your mom spent more of the time asking what was wrong with me. I think she asks Claude that quite a bit. What is wrong with my husband?
What's wrong with my husband?
Yes.
Man.
All right, we will end it there. We appreciate you all joining us for our 60th episode, and until next time, we'll be here in the interim.